My name is Natalie Carter, and last December, my parents told me there wasn't enough room for me at Christmas. That was their excuse. A tidy little sentence, dressed up in politeness, delivered over the phone with zero guilt. Tyler's fiancée is bringing her entire family this year, my mother said, like she was explaining a scheduling conflict. You understand, don't you, Nat? I wanted to ask. Understand what, exactly? That I'm their daughter, but not the right kind. That a successful, unmarried, childless woman somehow takes up more space than a dozen strangers. Instead, I said, of course, and hung up the call with a smile in my voice and a storm in my chest. It wasn't the first time I'd been quietly erased by my own family, but this one hurt more than usual, because I had let myself hope. I had built something extraordinary. Nova Studio was thriving. I led a team of over 100 creatives. I'd been featured in magazines and asked to speak at global design summits. But none of it was enough. Not when my brother, Tyler, the family favorite, was marrying into wealth. Not when my existence made things complicated for their image. I thought that was the end of it. Until 3 months later, our HR director walked into my office and said, Natalie, we just received an application from a Tyler Carter. He's applying for a leadership role. I didn't flinch. I just smiled and said, let's see how this plays out. I suppose it started long before that Christmas. Long before the guest list and the fake smiles and the we just don't have space. Growing up, I was never the daughter my parents expected. Too curious. Too independent. Too loud about things they preferred to whisper. My mother once told me, half joking, of course, that I came out of the womb negotiating. Meanwhile, my younger brother, Tyler, was the golden boy from the moment he took his first breath. He had that effortless charm people mistook for confidence, and my parents ate it up. Photos of him filled the walls, first in his little league uniform, then prom tuxedos, and later, business casual headshots from internships Dad had arranged. Me. I was always the one behind the camera, the one taking the photos, not worthy of being in them. I didn't resent Tyler. Not at first. He was just playing the role they gave him. I resented the rules, spoken and unspoken, that told me I had to dim my light to make space for his. When I got into Pratt on partial scholarship for design, my parents said, maybe try something more practical. When did Tyler get into a third-tier business school with barely average grades? There were champagne toasts, social media posts, and a new MacBook waiting on his desk. So I stopped asking for permission. I moved to New York with 2 suitcases and a sketch pad. I took on student loans, worked nights at a diner, and freelanced under the table just to pay for coffee and rent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. By 25 I was leading creative teams for major clients. By 29, I'd launched Nova Studio with my best friend Camila, a powerhouse UX strategist who believed in me before I believed in myself. By 32, we had offices in 3 cities and contracts with Fortune 100 companies. And through it all, my parents never once came to visit. They claimed they were too busy, but somehow always had time for Tyler's startup pitches, most of which fizzled out before his investors sobered up. They never asked about my milestones. Never shared my press features or award wins. I never even learned what my company actually did. But I kept inviting them. Birthdays, launch parties, speaking events. Most of the time they didn't reply. Sometimes, Mom would send a polite, "We're so proud of you," text, followed by an unsolicited photo of Tyler and his girlfriend at some gala or vacation. It was like I lived in a parallel reality, one where I was visible only when they needed to show off, never when I actually needed to feel seen. Camila once asked me why I still cared. You've outgrown them, Nat. Why give them that kind of power? I didn't have a good answer. Maybe it was that small, stubborn part of me that still remembered being 8 years old, sitting alone after a school art show, waiting for parents who never showed. Or 16, winning a regional design competition, only for my dad to say, well, Let's see how long this little phase lasts. Even now, with a view of the skyline and a company name etched on the building's glass, that 8-year-old still lived inside me. Quiet, hopeful, foolish. So when my mom called that December and invited me to Christmas, I let myself believe. Just for a moment. I imagined walking through the front door again. Not as the oddball, not as the afterthought, but as me. Natalie Carter. A woman who had made something beautiful from the silence. But then came the second call. The disinvite. The excuse. We just don't have room. Not enough room. In a 5-bedroom house. With a living room the size of my entire apartment. With folding chairs stacked in the garage. And a dining table that could seat 12. I wasn't excluded because there wasn't space. I was excluded because I didn't fit the frame they were trying to present. Tyler's fiancée came from money. Her father was a venture capitalist. Her mother chaired some arts foundation in D.C. They vacationed in the Alps, sent thank you cards on monogrammed linen, and carried generational wealth in their DNA. And me, I was the tattooed, outspoken sister who built a design firm from scratch and chose freedom over marriage. The wild card, the embarrassment. They didn't want to risk the image. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Not loud, not dramatic, but like a quiet thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I canceled my flight. Donated the gifts I'd bought. Deleted the playlist I'd made for the drive home. I told Camila I'd be working through the holidays. But she didn't buy it. Christmas Eve came with frost on the windows and silence in my apartment. Seattle was beautiful in December. Twinkling lights, crisp air, fireplaces glowing behind tall windows, but inside my penthouse, it felt hollow. Not even the city's charm could fill the space left by that phone call. I hadn't decorated much. A minimalist tree sat in the corner. A few silver ornaments, a copper wire star on top. No stockings, no garland, no scent of cinnamon or pine. Just stillness. I spent the morning answering emails no one had sent, pretending to be busy while the rest of the world slowed down to breathe, gather, and laugh. Around noon, Camila texted again. Camilla, dinner's at 5. Mom made her famous tamales. We're waiting for you. I'm not taking no for an answer. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to say yes. To put on a cozy sweater, pick up a bottle of wine, and pretend, for a few hours, that I had a place to belong. But another part of me, the part that still flinched at the word, family, that part hesitated. I didn't want to feel like a guest in someone else's warmth. I wanted to be someone's daughter. Someone's person. Not just the stray friend they'd taken out of pity. So I didn't reply. Instead, I made tea. I curled up under a blanket. I watched the snow fall in silence. And then came the second message. Camilla, my dad just said, it's not Christmas without Natalie's sarcasm. You're literally family, Nat. Bring your grinchy self. No pressure, but please come. My throat tightened. I thought about my parents, sitting around that long oak table with Tyler and his fiancée's family. I wondered if anyone noticed the empty seat. If they made some half-hearted excuse for why I wasn't there. Or if they simply never mentioned me. I opened the cabinet and pulled out a box of wine truffles I'd planned to bring home. Grabbed a bottle of Malbec. Threw on a coat. By the time I got to Camilla's house, the porch was glowing with fairy lights, and her younger brother was already waving at me from the window. Finally. Her dad called out when he opened the door, pulling me into a bear hug. Camilla grinned from the kitchen, her apron covered in flour. I told you she'd come. Their house was chaos in the best way, warm, loud, filled with laughter and overlapping conversations. Kids running around, grandparents arguing about card games. Someone was playing Jose Feliciano way too loud in the background, and no one asked about my work. No one brought up awards, clients, or quarterly growth. No one asked why I didn't come home. They just passed me a plate and made space at the table. Later that night, after dinner, I sat on the back porch wrapped in a knit blanket, watching the snow collect on the railing. Camila came out and handed me a cup of hot cocoa. You okay? I nodded. This feels like what it's supposed to feel like, I whispered. It's weird. Not weird, she said softly. It's called being wanted. I stared out at the quiet street, lights twinkling in the distance. I didn't know it could feel like this. I admitted. Me neither, Camila said. Until my mom took you in like a second daughter 5 years ago. I smiled, eyes stinging. The truth was, Camila's family had always shown up. Every milestone, every heartbreak, every launch party, gallery opening, midnight breakdown. They didn't share my blood, but they saw me. And maybe that mattered more. When I drove home that night, the city looked different. Not warmer, not brighter. But clearer. I knew what I had built, what I had chosen, and what I no longer needed to beg for. I went to bed feeling strangely at peace, but I had no idea what was waiting for me just a few months later. It was a Monday morning in late March. Gray skies, stale coffee, my inbox overflowing with candidate resumes for the new product director role. I had just finished reviewing a promising UX lead from Chicago when Jasmine, our head of people and culture, knocked lightly on my office door. She looked amused and conflicted. Got a minute? She asked, stepping in. Sure, I said, gesturing toward the chair across from me. Please tell me you're not here to add more to my plate. She smiled tightly and slid a printed resume across the desk. Thought you'd want to see this one in hard copy. I raised an eyebrow and turned the page over. And there it was. Tyler Carter, Executive Strategy Consultant BA, in Business Communications, current city, Pittsburgh. I blinked. What? I murmured, scanning the document. Fluff titles, vague achievements, no technical qualifications, no leadership experience, and definitely no idea who runs Nova Studio. Did he know this is my company? I asked slowly. Jasmine shook her head. Doubt it. He applied through a public recruiter listing. Didn't even send a cover letter. I almost laughed. Of course he didn't. During the screening call, he asked Alicia from HR if she could connect him to someone who actually makes decisions. Jasmine added. Her blood boiled. That sounded exactly like Tyler. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled in front of my mouth. A strange mix of emotions rippled through me: amusement, irritation, a twinge of hurt, and something else. An opportunity. I'll stay out of the selection process, I said after a moment. If he's not qualified, don't move him forward. No exceptions. Jasmine gave me a long look. We normally wouldn't. But, I raised an eyebrow. He mentioned he had connections, said he could bring in potential clients. Some of the team think that could be worth exploring. Of course he did. Tyler had always been good at getting into rooms he didn't earn. He coasted on charm, last names, and mutual golf buddies. What he lacked in substance, he made up for in confidence, and people fell for it, again and again. Did he mention any actual companies? I asked. Not really. He just said his fiancée's father might be interested in partnerships. Very vague. I stared at the resume again, eyes landing on the final line, looking to lead innovative product teams toward market disruption. I almost rolled my eyes. He had no idea what we even did. Schedule him for an interview, I said finally. Jasmine blinked. You want to move him forward, I want to observe. I clarified. Don't tell him who I am. Don't put me on the schedule. Let me sit in as a board advisor. A silent observer. If the team thinks he's a fit, great. But I need to see for myself. Jasmine nodded slowly. Are you sure you're okay with that? I paused. No, not really. But I needed to know what kind of man my brother had become when no one was there to shield him. I'm sure, I said. After she left, I stared out the window for a long time. Seattle was still draped in fog, the skyline barely visible through the mist. I thought about all the years Tyler had been given handouts, second chances, and soft landings. I thought about that Christmas phone call. How I had been told there wasn't room for me, while the man who once called my business just a hobby was welcomed like royalty. And now he was applying to my company, my team, my table. He didn't even know I'd built the table. The next day, 3:00 p.m. sharp. I sat at the end of the glass-walled conference room, clipboard in hand, dressed in a charcoal blazer, hair pulled into a clean knot. 2 other board advisors flanked me, equally neutral. On the far end, our interview panel waited. Alicia from HR, Sam from product, Camila from strategy. And then the door opened. Tyler stepped in, confident and glossy as ever, tailored navy suit, fresh haircut, phone in hand, smiling like he owned the room. He barely glanced at our side of the table. I wasn't surprised. People like Tyler don't look for power in quiet corners. They aim for the spotlight. He took a seat and launched into his usual script. Thanks for the opportunity. I've admired Nova Studios' work from afar for years. I think I could bring tremendous value to your product direction, especially in connecting with high-profile clients. He didn't mention a single project we'd done, didn't reference any product lines, didn't even pronounce our flagship software correctly. The team started with technical questions about research processes, user empathy mapping, scalability architecture. Tyler deflected every one with buzzwords and bravado. My strength is in big picture strategy, he said with a chuckle. I leave the tech stuff to the techies. You don't hire visionaries to write code. I kept my expression neutral. Inside, something cold settled in my stomach. Not just disappointment, clarity. This was who he was. No effort. No growth. He still expects the world to hand him everything wrapped in gold ribbon. And this time, I was the one holding the ribbon. From the moment Tyler walked into that room, I knew nothing had changed. He still believed charm could replace competence. Still thought confidence could cover ignorance. Still acted like the world owed him something, especially when it belonged to someone else. He sat comfortably across from the interview panel, legs crossed, tie perfectly straight, flashing that easy smile that used to melt our parents into applause. I've followed Nova Studios' rise in the industry, he said, even though I was sure he hadn't. I bring a strong strategic mindset and client relationship experience, and I'm connected in ways that could open doors. He leaned back like he'd already nailed it. Camila glanced toward me. Her eyes said everything. This guy is full of it. Sam from product launched into a series of questions. Tell us how you would approach scaling a design system for a multi-platform product. Tyler blinked. Well, that's more of a technical issue. I would delegate that to the UX leads and developers. I focus on high-level vision and alignment. And how would you handle a conflict between creative direction and client demands? Camila asked. I'm all about harmony, he replied smoothly. I believe in compromise. Besides, clients trust me. I build rapport fast. Alicia raised an eyebrow. And what's your experience managing cross-functional teams on deadline-driven sprints? Tyler smirked. I've overseen marketing efforts across departments. No one ever complained. I watched as he bobbed and weaved, dodging accountability like it was a sport. He threw out names of tools he'd probably Googled the night before. Mentioned human-centered design, without once referencing actual users. And the final straw. I don't think you need to get lost in technical weeds, he said with a self-satisfied laugh. You don't hire someone like me to write briefs. You hire me to represent the company, to inspire clients, to elevate the brand. The irony nearly made me choke. I had spent the last decade building that brand, pixel by pixel, pitch by pitch, late night after late night, while he was bouncing from startup to startup, protected by family excuses and investor blind spots. And now here he was, auditioning for a role he didn't earn, in a company he didn't respect, thinking it would all just fall into his lap. Sam looked toward me, giving the subtle nod we had agreed on. Camila turned to Tyler, still polite, still measured. Our CEO usually likes to meet final-round candidates, she said. She's been sitting in on key interviews today to evaluate culture fit. Tyler straightened his posture, adjusting his watch. "I'd be honored," he said, all charm. "Love to connect with leadership." Camila smiled slightly. "She's here now?" Then she turned to me. "Natalie, would you like to take it from here?" The air shifted. I stood slowly. Tyler turned to look, and froze. The color drained from his face. "Hello, Tyler," I said, calm and poised. "It's been a while." His mouth opened. Closed. He stared at me like I was a ghost. I walked to the end of the table, pulled out the chair across from him, and sat down. "You're the CEO?" he asked, his voice small. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Founder and CEO of Nova Studio. Since day one." Camila slid a folder across the table. "Natalie reviews final candidates personally." Tyler's hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his posture. "I didn't know. I didn't realize." "No," I interrupted gently. "You didn't, because you never cared to ask." He flinched. I opened his resume. Took a breath. "So, you list your current role as Executive Strategy Consultant at Blackstone and Gray, but our background check shows your official title is Marketing Associate. Can you clarify?" He shifted in his seat. "It's a flexible title," he mumbled. "I take on high-level projects. Titles are fluid there. And under skills, you list product development and team leadership." I continued. "Can you describe a product you've led from concept to launch?" "I managed the branding strategy for a mobile app at my last job," he offered. "Which part did you lead?" I asked. "Research, wireframes, usability testing." "I guided the overall vision," he said defensively. I nodded. "Tyler," I said evenly, "this position requires hands-on experience. Real leadership, not borrowed prestige." He went quiet. Then, as if grasping for lifelines, he muttered, "Kimberly's dad is well connected. He's considering investing in creative firms. If you bring me on board, he might." I held up a hand. "Stop." I met his eyes, finally fully. "This isn't a negotiation. It's a reckoning." He looked like he'd been slapped. "I built this company from nothing," I said. "No connections. No shortcuts. No favors. I waited tables to pay my rent, while you were partying on mom and dad's dime. I pitched clients who didn't know my name in rooms where no one expected me to speak." I paused, letting the silence sink in. "And I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because no one else would bet on me." Tyler swallowed. "I didn't mean to. You meant to walk in here and be handed something you didn't earn," I said, no longer softening the truth. "Because you thought this was just another room where your last name would open the door." He said nothing. Camila closed her notebook. "Thank you, Tyler," she said crisply. "We'll be in touch." Tyler stood slowly, face pale, confidence cracked. He looked at me once more, something like shame flickering in his expression. But I didn't move. Didn't smile. Didn't offer comfort. I just watched as the boy, who had always been given everything, walked out of a room where, for once, he had to earn his place, and couldn't. I had just returned to my office when Jasmine called. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Natalie, your parents are in the lobby. They're asking to see you." Immediately, I closed my eyes, of course. It had only been 30 minutes since Tyler walked out of that interview with his ego bruised and his entitlement exposed. I should have known he wouldn't go quietly. Should have known he'd run straight to mom and dad, because that's what always happened. He made a mess. They came to clean it up. Except this time, I was the one holding them up. "Send them up?" I said calmly. "And Jasmine, can you and Camila be here in 10? I want witnesses." She understood without needing further explanation. "Absolutely." My father walked in first, imposing, stern. The same look he used to give teachers who dared suggest Tyler needed to try harder. My mother followed, eyes flicking across my office with visible surprise, like she hadn't expected it to be this real. The skyline glittered behind me. Framed awards lined the wall. A sleek Nova Studio logo glowed faintly on the glass partition. They didn't say hello. "Rebecca," my father began. using my full name like I was 10 years old again. What the hell do you think you're doing? Running my company? I replied. Is this some kind of vendetta? He snapped. You humiliated your brother in front of strangers. No, I said evenly. He did that himself. He stared at me. He wasn't qualified, Dad. He couldn't answer a single technical question. He applied for a leadership role with no experience and walked in expecting to charm his way through it. My mother jumped in, voice thin. He just needs a chance. You of all people should understand that. I turned toward her slowly. You mean like the chance I never got? She hesitated. My father didn't. You've always had opportunities. You just chose a different path? No, I said. I created one. While you were busy funding Tyler's every failure, I was building something with no help, no support, and no safety net. You're still bitter, he scoffed. Still trying to prove something. I stood, my voice finally rising. I'm not trying to prove anything. I did prove it. Every contract, every client, every late night and early morning. I did it all without you. And now that I have something you finally recognize as success, you want to show up and claim a seat at the table. He stepped forward. We're not here for us. We're here for your brother. He needs this job. He doesn't deserve this job, I said flatly. And I'm not bending the rules because he shares my last name. My mother looked stricken. But Natalie, family helps each other. I looked her dead in the eyes. Where was family when you told me not to come home for Christmas? Her mouth opened. Closed. Where was family when I begged for help with tuition, and you said the money was already promised to Tyler's future? She flinched. Where was family when I launched Nova and sent you photos, and all you replied was that's nice, before asking about Tyler's new girlfriend? They were silent. Jasmine knocked softly and entered, followed by Camila. I didn't stop them. This is Jasmine, our head of people and culture. Camila, my co-founder. They've both been part of this process and can confirm. Tyler was treated no differently than any other candidate. My father's face reddened. Are you really bringing strangers into a family matter? This isn't a family matter, I said sharply. It's a professional one. Tyler applied like anyone else. He failed like anyone else. And I will not rewrite standards to make him feel better. But he's your brother, my mother cried. And I was your daughter? I replied coldly. Still am. But that never seemed to carry the same weight. The room fell into silence. Heavy. Final. Then my father straightened his jacket. Come on, Elaine. She's made her choice. As they reached the door, my mother looked back. Her voice was barely a whisper. Your office is beautiful. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. I no longer needed her to admire what I had built. I just needed her to understand I wasn't building it for her anymore. The office felt quieter after they left. Jasmine and Camila remained for a few moments, just sitting with me, no words, just presence. You okay? Camila finally asked. I nodded, not because I was fine, but because I was done waiting for them to make me feel seen. For years, I had tiptoed around their expectations, softened my voice, minimized my success. Not anymore? Thank you for being here, I said quietly. Camila reached over and squeezed my hand. Jasmine stood. If Tyler decides to apply for a junior position, we'll handle it like we would anyone else. No shortcuts. I smiled. That's all I ask. I didn't expect to hear from Tyler again. But the next morning there he was, standing in my office doorway, looking rumpled and uncertain. He didn't knock. He never did. I'm not here to fight, he said. I gestured for him to sit. He didn't. I talked to Mom and Dad, he continued. They're upset. Embarrassed. I waited. He glanced around the room, maybe noticing, for the first time, how real it all was. How hard won? I didn't know this was yours, he admitted. I mean, I knew you worked in design, but not this. I tilted my head. And whose responsibility is that? He swallowed. Look, I don't want to argue. I need a job. Not a handout. Just a start. I took a breath. We do have openings in the junior brand strategy team, I said. It's entry level. Competitive pay. But you'd start like everyone else. Training, mentorship, performance reviews. No shortcuts. No title inflation. His jaw tensed. Entry level? That's what you're qualified for. Tyler. A long pause. I have experience, he said, clearly wounded. 5 years in marketing? Not in our field. Not at our standards. He looked away. I've been offered better. Then take it. That landed. He stared at the floor. Then back at me. You're really not going to help me? I just did. He didn't speak again. Just turned, walked to the door, and before leaving, muttered, Wes, some things never change. He meant it as a jab. But to me it was a confirmation. No, Tyler. Some things did change. I changed. A week passed, no calls, no texts. And honestly, I didn't expect any. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, Jasmine knocked gently on my door. He applied. She said with a small smile. Tyler. She nodded. Filled out the application for junior brand strategist. No notes. No references. Just sent it in like anyone else. I leaned back in my chair. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an admission. But it was something. Put him through the standard process, I said. No favors? Of course. Jasmine replied. We've already lined up a panel interview. He doesn't know who'll be on it, and you're not on the list. Good, I said. Let's keep it that way. He got the job. Barely. Feedback from the panel was mixed, bright but unprepared. Defensive under pressure, but also capable of learning, if humbled. Camilla raised an eyebrow when we discussed it. Are you sure about this? I nodded. He needs structure more than comfort. If this company can offer him that, fine. But he earns his place here like anyone else. No one protects him. Not even me. His first day he didn't stop by my office. Didn't look for me in the hallway. Didn't try to make peace. And I didn't go looking for him either. But 2 days later, I overheard him asking good questions in the break room. Asking for clarification instead of pretending he already knew. Staying after hours. Taking notes. Listening. It wasn't transformation. It wasn't redemption. But it was growth. And that was enough. One evening, my phone buzzed. Mom? I hesitated, then picked up. Her voice was soft. Almost shy. I read that article about you in Fast Company, she said. You looked beautiful in the photos. The interview was impressive. I didn't know what to say. Then she added, we had no idea how much you built. How much you carried. I let the silence stretch. Then finally said, you didn't want to know. She didn't deny it. We're trying now, she said. A part of me wanted to lean into that moment, to cry, to ask why it took so long. But another part, the stronger part, just said, okay. You don't fix years of silence with a compliment. You don't undo a childhood of being overlooked with one phone call. But you can open a window, and if the air is different, you leave it open a little longer. Summer came to Seattle quietly that year. The rain thinned out, the office windows stayed open longer. The rooftop lunches returned, and I noticed Tyler, still in his entry-level role, coming in early, leaving late. I didn't speak to him. Not beyond the occasional nod in the hallway. Not until he knocked on my office door one Thursday afternoon. I looked up. He stood there, no bravado this time. Just a quiet kind of resolve. I wanted to say thank you, he said. For the job. For the chance. I didn't say anything at first. Then, you're doing the work. That's what matters. He nodded. I know I was arrogant. And blind. I still have a lot to learn. I gave him a long look. Then keep learning. You don't owe me gratitude. You owe the team respect. He nodded again. I'm trying. That was enough. He left without trying to fix what couldn't be fixed in a sentence. And for once, I respected that. A week later, an envelope arrived at my apartment. Cream-colored, handwritten, an invitation, my parents' 40th anniversary dinner, no caveats, no guest list politics. No passive-aggressive messaging. Just "we'd love to see you." I stared at it for a long time. Camila and I had plans that night. Nothing urgent, just wine and dumplings and trash TV. But I knew I'd go. Not for them. For me. The dinner was small. Backyard. String lights, home-cooked food, my father grilled. My mother smiled more than I remembered she could. Tyler was there, quiet, respectful and present. They didn't try to make a speech. They didn't pretend nothing had happened. And I didn't pretend to forget. But I sat at the table. And this time, there was a seat already waiting for me. After dinner, my mom brought out an old photo album. One I hadn't seen in years. Among the faded pages and childhood snapshots, she slid in a new photo. A clipping from Fast Company. Me in front of the Nova Studio sign. Her handwriting underneath read, "Our daughter, Natalie, founder." No commentary. Just that. A label I had once begged for. Now offered. Quietly, respectfully, without strings. I didn't cry. Didn't collapse into some cinematic reunion. I just nodded. "Thank you," I said. And meant it. No one becomes whole because someone finally sees them. You become whole when you decide you already are. The rest. That's just extra light. And maybe, after all these years, I didn't need my family's permission to shine. Just a window. And the strength to leave it open.